Predicting. Predictable predictions.
Predict.
Predictable predictions.
Predictable.
Predictive. Predictable.
Okay, predictive programming, episode 6. I'm going to lose count eventually.
We're just going to, all predictive programming is going to be is just you and me, and then sometimes we'll bring an Adi back every now and then.
No, we had a guest today, and I just didn't follow through this morning. But guest next week,
yes.
Guest till the end of time. And you got to drive today because I'm fried after a crazy, crazy weekend. But take the wheel, Jesus.
All right. So
wait, no, you know what? I remember what I wanted to talk about because I heard that a lot of people don't like the way I dress on this podcast and think that I have been getting progressively more and more obnoxious with my outfits.
This is true.
And that the open flannel with the loon on the ball cap is some kind of wannabe blue collar, valor stealing, pathetic Brooklyn dad thing. And all I have to say is, wow, great read. Spot on, nailed it. You should try prediction markets if that's what you thought, because your intuition is working for
maybe
you.
there'll be a market on what you dress as next.
That's great.
Programming.
And we can insider trade it. All right. Take over.
All right.
What do you got for this week?
All right. We were having
any news for you? Any personal news?
There is some personal news.
Okay.
I've taken over as your job. Jacob had enough of your shit and
thank goodness
put me in charge. I'm coming over. I'm excited to be here full time.
You're coming to work at Novig.
Yep. Yeah. I know people are gonna have a lot of questions, so I figured I might as well just
nobody's gonna have any questions. Nobody cares. But go ahead. Let's talk about pretend questions.
Address them all. So I was in talks with Kalshi, Polymarket, and Novig, and I took
honestly, Kalshi and Polymarket only for a while.
Yes,
right? Yeah.
Yes, and I was going to Henry, for a lot of advice because I know you've done what I want to do, and I want to do. And I guess first I'll kind of back up as to why I made this decision. I kind of felt like I accomplished most of what I wanted betting wise. Without sounding like an absolute egotist maniac, I've built enough that I could comfortably retire with what I have, and making more money is making $1 is not as good as losing $1 for me in my current state. And I could still run my betting operation pretty well, even taking on a job here or a Poly or Kalshi, and I could just take a little bit step back, hurt my median earn over the next few years, but increase the upside if I think what is going to happen to the prediction market space, which is going to explode. We've already seen an explosion in the last couple months, and I wanted to get ahead of it and jump on. So that's kind of why I wanted to take this position, and I think I'm uniquely able to do this because not a lot of people bet the size I've bet and successfully as I've bet for as long as I've bet, and have used exchanges and have the relationship with people like yourself that already know what's going on. So I thought I could really help in a big way. So when I was in talks with Paulie and Kalshi, they were attractive offers, but then I kind of thought, what if I went here? And I said, Henry, would you guys be interested in having me? And Jacob was all over it. I respect him a lot, and I know I couldn't get the same offer that I could get with Paulie and Kalshi, and I took a significant cut. But my attitude is the odds that Novig 10x's or 20x's is significantly greater than that of a Kalshi and a Polymarket. I think in a few years,
just because they've already benchmarked at such high valuations.
Right. I would not be surprised if in a few years it's not a 2-horse race, where people think in the prediction market space it's a 3-horse race, and we're that third. And I know people are already saying I said to sell. I was playing devil's advocate. That wasn't actually my full. I was saying I could make the argument in that kind of situation. So I think the upside of Novig is just worth a ton, and I also get to work with one of my better friends and you every day. I'm not actually replacing you. We're going to be working more.
I hope you replace a lot of what I do because I'm tired, dude. I need you. I think I'm a little spoiled because when I would interview people, I'd be like, because I talk to you all day, I'd be like, well, everybody knows all this stuff, right? And then you're like, actually, not a lot of people get how all this works. I think I might actually need Chris.
Right.
So I'm glad we could make it work.
Yeah.
It's bad for this podcast because I thought we were going to get you on Calci or Polly's team, and then we'd be like, bringing all that information and all those people. And I'm like, we don't need two people from the same company. So we might have to replace you with Tarek. Which should be easy to achieve. I'll just ring him up and ask him. But,
of course. I think, look, when we started this podcast, we didn't want it to just be like a Novig shill. Yeah. I don't think we will do that. I'll try the best. Obviously, we're going to be a little biased, but we'll try our very best.
If we do that, people will make fun of us online.
Exactly.
And we have we're such cowards, and we check our mentions so much that it'll make us act correctly.
All right, pivoting off. Speaking of mentions, we had a conversation while we're having lunch about mention markets. We have vastly different viewpoints on this. So you were making the case that you're excited for mention markets, and I think they're terrible.
Well, first of all, I like trading mention markets. I think they're the sort of thing where even if you don't necessarily think you're going to trade them, you start looking at prices and you say, oh, that's not right. Like it's very easy to tell yourself that you know better than what the market is on these things. It's been my just recreational experience looking at them. But what I specifically think is if mention markets on entertainment properties or political speeches or whatever can become huge and attract audiences that haven't bet on sports, because betting on sports is like kind of the classic.
Of course.
Maybe trading crypto and especially altcoins would be the other like kind of behavior people are used to that is getting them into prediction markets. The unique thing about mention markets, all I was really saying, is that you can do mention markets on major sports broadcasts. You can do Monday Night Football mention markets, and there are certain markets that price relatively similarly week after week, like Inch or whatever, these things that people kind of have recurring long-term views that they're refining about what the fair value is. And in that regard, they very, very closely resemble regular player props or other sports game props. So I think mention markets are unique in that there is this one variant of them that right now looks very close to a sports market, very, very close, where it could be a literal market type that week after week after week recurs rather than being like super bespoke. And that makes it easier to get into as a user. It makes it easier to build infrastructure around as a first-party market provider or third-party data provider. And if from there you can monkey branch off into what are they going to talk about on Love Island tonight or whatever, if it's that similar, to me that seems like a path that has some positive feedback loops built into it inherently. Now, of course, there are downsides.
Yeah, so this is what I was kind of worried about. This is all nice in theory, and I know you live in fantasy land where everything works out.
Well, I mean, this is. I'm just talking about how it grows as a market, right?
Yeah, sure. But
your concerns around integrity.
Let me bring back to reality for a second here, okay? The problem that I see is, let's say everything goes on, and you can actually get, like, what Joe Buck is going to say gets millions traded. Mm-hmm. Now we get to a point where Joe Buck can insider trade and make a few $100,000. And Joe Buck can just say, all he has to do is say the word inch or not say the word inch the entire podcast.
Yeah.
And that is like, how does that affect? It's not like if a quarterback intentionally throws a pick six or intentionally does something like that would really affect the game integrity. This does not affect what he says on broadcast.
The integrity of what? Yeah, right.
There's nothing. So he might think, well, I'm not hurting anyone. I'm just making a few $100,000. And I'm not saying
Joe Buck may be the wrong guy, but there are nobodies who call games.
Of course, and like that's the problem that I would see. And look, insider trading is always going to happen. There's no way you can stop it. But the way that everyone gets pinched in this, and the way that like this all blows up, is if the CFTC says this is getting too ridiculous, the insider trading is getting obscene, we need to stop. And I could see if they had people insider trading mention markets, which are so easy to do, that it could create a massive problem. Where like, I know people talk about, oh, sports are rigged, and like, and there has of course been college basketball and college football games thrown. I'm sure
NBA point shaving by referees.
Of course, like look. As a trader, I'm sure you can even see some flow and know, okay, this game's gonna get rigged at some point. I mean, like you probably have, or not, you have an idea.
Every once in a while, yeah. And usually there's a U.S. U.S. integrity. Yeah, there's often a report
but
later.
That is really hard to do because there's a lot of moving parts. It's really hard to do, but something like mention markets is easy, and everyone talks about this stuff that's been caught before, but. If I'm just going to say Joe Buck because it's really the only
shout out Joe Buck
color commentator.
It's actually better to pick somebody who you think is above it versus Ian Eagle. Like
right.
I don't know how much money Ian Eagle has. He might actually do it.
Right. So, sorry, he's really like the only play-by-play guy that I actually know.
Yeah. Who seems rich.
And it's if he was smart about it, he could probably take 30,000-40,000 and never get noticed and do it for like a long time. And like sometimes he would say and sometimes he wouldn't, so it would seem random, and the flow would be like a small percentage of it. And imagine if people started doing it smart, then you get into real problems, because then eventually someone's gonna get greedy.
Probably already happening.
And then it might already be happening. And then the whole thing gets blown up, and you see, holy crap! Over the last 2 years, he's made millions of dollars. And then the whole thing gets thrown in the question. The CFTC says this is ridiculous, and they put a stop to it all. That's what my fear is.
Yeah.
If you guaranteed me that wouldn't happen, then I would be happy.
And the exchanges shouldn't play with fire like this.
Yes.
Because they need,
Yes.
You need to put out a good face on all this stuff.
I think I've made the argument before that, like, if I was the NFL, just pay the refs like $1 million per game. That salary is insignificant to how much they are, and now it becomes almost impossible to like manipulate a ref, because what ref is going to make $1 million a game and then take like $100,000 bribe to throw an extra roughing the passer penalty or holding penalty on a key third down or something like that? Okay, now you're talking about massive salary. Now you can make that same argument with like a Joe Buck, but like to your point, some lesser announcers that maybe only are getting a few $100,000 or $1 million a year.
Yeah. Well, you see this happen like in super low level tennis tournaments, right?
Of course,
or like ping
course.
pong, where there's a game theory element to this, where the reward of playing the game with integrity is always supposed to be so much larger than the possible reward of trading it. The one glaring exception is college sports, where the vast majority of athletes don't get paid. But you somehow are supposed to enforce integrity, which I think is traditionally done through social forces and like punishment based. But yeah, it can become a tricky problem. It certainly is not a good idea to just kind of hand wave it away or say insider trading is a feature, not a bug. Like, we're getting towards the truth faster. Like,
that is terrible. Like,
and even setting aside regulatory concerns, like let's say you're completely offshore, you have no regulatory concerns whatsoever. I think we both would agree we're like big time. These markets don't exist if insider trading is rampant, right? Like the market makers do disappear. The idea that they're always collecting a spread and delta neutral and everything is insane. Anybody who tells you market makers are delta neutral and everything and are indifferent to inside information,
no idea,
has never like seeded a market in their entire life. Like, that's just not the reality at all. You get devastated by that kind of action.
I think like if you asked me a few months ago, I would have thought like these market makers just print and have it so easy. But after like trying to do some of it myself, seeing it all, and now I'm starting to see, and just even talks with you going over the system, I realize you do a lot of work, you spend a lot of time to, if you're lucky, make 2% and probably make less than 1%. And it's like, you have to do all this work. And yes, if you do a good job, you make 1% on a big number.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of money, but it's actually really hard to do that. And a slight change, 1% is not a big ROI. And like, we all know that SIG is a big market maker on Kalshi, probably the world right now, in terms of sports. I bet if I put an over-under on their ROI, even from the Robinhood flow, it's probably 1.3%. That would be like my guess.
When you ask, like, okay, are you trying to max ROI or max volume? Like, would you be willing? And I said, trading at 0% is basically as difficult as trading at 1.5%.
Right.
Like either way, you have to account for every single major vulnerability.
Yep.
And then you're just tuning the parameters around like regular flow. But the big vulnerabilities are all of your like weak points. And that's where all the insider stuff is killer. But secondary to like whether or not it dries up liquidity is the question of, does it just kill the reputation of the product? And does it bring the hammer of God down on you? Which, what I think needs to happen, and if I had a giant war chest, like if I had just raised a couple $1 billion, I would invest in a team to build the Sport Radar or similar product of prediction markets, and specifically built around my biggest new categories, like a dedicated third-party company that is providing all necessary data around mentioned markets, climate markets, whatever, including like very clear end times and like past post targets, right? Like any trade executed after this exact timestamp should be voided. Like, stop with all this, well, even after they say it, you can trade in the 99-1 regime because maybe we misheard it. It's still an active market.
Yeah.
Like, come up with a source of truth that can tell you the parameters around safely allowing trading on this market, and that can flag past posts and the like, and similar around integrity. And be able to deliver, it is a CFTC requirement to have a team around market surveillance and integrity. It's a little nebulously defined. I certainly wouldn't want to like try and speak about what exactly the regulations say. And often the way these things work is you tell the regulators what you're going to do. They approve it, and then if there's an issue, they check if you're actually doing what you said you would do. But it's a little kind of self-certify-ish, and a little bit of like the operators explaining back to the regulators like what a good faith effort looks like, because nobody's really an expert, right? But I think there is a lot of money to be made just from business development in creating the standards. Like, we don't have standards is the summary around this. And there's enough money going around that somebody should be working on building the standard product. If you're doing that, let me know, especially if you need a small check. That's something I'd be interested in hearing about. You don't want the cart before the horse, right? Like, that's a great idea from me. One of my many great ideas. The space is exploding, right? That we can't deliver that tomorrow. What do you do in the meantime? But even just signaling that you think that is important, and steps everybody's going to take to get going in that direction, I think might be better than the current state of affairs we have, which is like, isn't this fun?
And something I want to touch on is, look, I've been critical before about exchanges and prediction markets basically just being sports books dressed up a little nicer. And I still hold that belief. But what I would say the big difference here is, and another thing that kind of I think I've changed my mind on in the last month or so, is I thought, okay, this is just like regulatory arbitrage, and this might stop in like a year if like DraftKings and FanDuel have like enough of this. But I think a good argument that you can be made is, why does a customer have to lose at 30% on parlays when they bet on FanDuel and DraftKings, or like 7% live with the 15-cent lines, or like 5% pregame with the 10-cent lines? There's a lot of money that those companies are making that those customers don't deserve to lose. I'm not saying these customers are going to win now on exchanges. They're just going to lose less. And I think that's the big pitch and the big argument that is going to allow, in my opinion, prediction markets and exchanges to make it and stay. With RFQs becoming a thing, you can have the same product, except just better margins for everyone. Everyone's going to have to compete for liquidity. Sure, there's going to have internal market makers and there's going to have market makers, and they're not your peers. But you're going to lose a lot less because their peers are going to try to steal your flow, and you need to get a better price to get it, which means a better experience for the customer. And I think that's what happens. So I'm now beginning to truly believe, which is a big reason why I wanted to join, that we might see the end of a FanDuel and a DraftKings, and not entirely the end, but the size of them might be capped. This might be the peak for them. I don't think DraftKings and FanDuel are going to go away in 10 years. But are they going to be a $100 billion company, which everyone thought they might be in 10 years? Probably not.
Yeah. I agree with you. And it's funny, having built the product, that the pitch was something along the lines of spreads are going to approach zero. And then when you launch the product, what you actually see is a lot of sharp action against your market makers, and then a lot of like arbitrage trading and front running the market. And you're like super shrewd users who are leveraging it in the kind of ways that you have to really understand sports markets for me to explain. And then one day, 6 months in, I'm like, oh, by the way, like all the primetime games at Post are 3 cents wide. I guess we did deliver that too. Like I had totally forgotten that was even part of the pitch, but it's here now.
One of the things that was like I really enjoyed is like the Super Bowl on Novig. I can't bet on Novig anymore, which is probably the biggest negative about joining your company. But I was not going to be able to bet on Kalshi or Polymarket if I joined them too. And I still have my operation. I can still bet in other places. But last Super Bowl, I got $100K down on the Super Bowl at like basically fair. At a Novig price.
Yeah.
It was trading minus 103, plus 102, or sometimes it was minus 104, plus 103. And I just like posted like basically 50K, got filled a half hour later, posted another 50, and I'm like, wow. This is incredible.
Yeah,
like I get to sweat a giant fun game. I had a kind of a lean. Am I probably winning? No, but I can't be losing that bad. I mean, how badly could I be losing?
Yeah, and internally, all we talk about right now is parlays, because nobody has made the jump to doing this for parlays for a lot of reasons. Nobody's even like been able to verbalize why it's so much harder. And so that is the really fun journey. I know I keep coming back to it, but if you start seeing SGP markets have the same effect, it's going to be so cool. And that is the really exciting part.
And I think it's possible. Look, I doubt SGP pricing ever gets where, like right now, if you pull up a DraftKings or a FanDuel or anything like that, and just do like a 2-leg SGP or 2-leg, and do a couple combos of them. And calculate the VIG, you'll see the VIG is like 20%. I mean, it's insanity. I'm not saying that drops to like 3% or 2%, but that could drop to like instead of the 20%, it could drop to single digits, because like when they have to compete against other market makers, they have to be more price, like willing to accept worse prices better prices for the customer, worse for them, because they're not going to get that flow anymore. And that's the beauty of the exchange. If we have some more time, I do want to also talk about what are some real use cases for prediction markets that aren't just quasi gambling.
Yeah, are you going to build this stuff for us?
I
Bing,
hope.
bing, 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 bing. We have a bell here we ring when somebody proposes an idea and you say, that's great. You need to go build it now because it was your idea. It's called the wagey bell. We might have to
Maybe.
ding you with the wagey bell a few times.
Maybe.
Let's hear the ideas.
Some are already coming out. Like obviously, betting on the political markets, like betting on the Trump Kamala presidency, is big. When I was at the family office, I remember the big boss coming in and saying, "We need to build our matrix out. If Trump wins and the Republicans maintain control of the House, we need to do this for the portfolio. If Kamala wins and
These are correlated political parlays. With real financial value.
We had conversations about what would happen.
Yeah.
If he could have actually just made a $10 to $25 million wager on these combos, he would have preferred that.
How much vig would he pay on a correlated politics parlay for $25 million?
Probably no more than 1%. Yeah. So and that's going to be the difficult thing is these guys look the fees that Kalshi are taking.
You have to do it OTC. You couldn't give somebody that much RFQ.
Yeah.
Like I could call him up and say, you tell me what your model shows. I'm looking at my model, and let's negotiate a price where we both agree you're paying about 1%, and I'll give you $25 million. If I'm in that position.
Yeah.
That I can't just get a request for $25 million on that and assume no, this is a good faith guy with risk to hedge who's not trying to angle me here.
Right, that's the thing. I think right now the problem that's set up is look, Kalshi's fees are pretty egregious for takers right now, and you're never going to get to a situation where an actual finance guy, a TradFi guy, actually comes here and wants to click you for $10 million and pay 3% or 5%. That's just never going to happen, and you'd have to get really, really competitive with the fees. But the thing is, if it was actually a liquid market and he could just trade straight up, hey, I think Trump's going to win, and I know this price is fair because it's been beat down by efficient market, like the Domers of the world that are actually building the price in. This could
not just this price too, but also the back model, the model driving this price has been back tested by previous elections, and we all have kind of agreed that this is the Black Scholes or whatever.
Exactly. So you could have politics for one, EPS, earnings per share. That's great, because another thing people get frustrated is they do all this work, they get the EPS correct, and then the CFO goes, well, we're actually going to be guiding down, and then it's part, if I knew that a company beat their EPS, I could buy the stock, but the stock doesn't go up 100% of the time.
The stock price is in many ways a derivative of this metric. And
exactly.
You might be a lead at this one metric.
Exactly.
Eating the variance on the actual stock price.
So I could totally see a universe where
this is similar to making or missing earnings.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. There are a lot of metrics like this.
Right. I could totally see a universe where we have this one hedge fund who believes that this earnings EPS is going to be $2.25 and another is going to be $2.35, and they buy at $2.30 and they each pay a 0.25% fee to the exchange, and they bet $50 million against each other, and it's they've both done their work. They're hedging their own positions by that as well, or they're even taking a position on it. Everyone wins in that scenario. I could actually see that world happening. Other than direct financial markets that just are derivatives of something in politics, I'm not seeing a whole bunch of stuff the mention markets, the Mr. Beast. How many times he says this? These YouTube, these Spotify things. They're more just gambling in a way, or that's what it is. But the thing is, I would make the argument that most of TradFi is actually just straight up gambling. And I know it's technically trading, and I know that's all technically trading, but people treat them more and in TradFi it's actually accepted, but in prediction market space it's not, which is wrong. It should be all considered one and the same. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But the problem is, you can't make the argument that these product should exist if there's no actual real use cases are. And I think if we really want to see this last for years, sports has a real valid use case, and all those things, the EPS, political markets, they all also have real use cases.
Yeah. How long the real, the use cases with financial impact are in many ways simply a validator of the concept.
Yeah.
But once cultural normalcy is established, then it's strictly about product.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the world completely opens up. And I think we're just beginning to scratch the surface of the integrations that are possible. And I think you're going to start seeing a lot more tickers embedded into products that you never would have expected. Like TBPN having like polymarket tickers.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that is going to be really cool. And I think, you can lose sight of this, but like venture capital does in some sense drive a lot of this, right? Like they are the ones writing these checks, and they are developing other consumer web and mobile products that they're saying in part like, no, we know this is worth this much money because we are going to build this next generation of consumer products that presupposes prediction markets are huge and integrates with them in every possible way. And this is just the reality we're going to deliver. Not like, masters of puppets level, but I think that's, you're seeing an entire thesis around the possibility of an economy that works that way, which if it fleshes out, it's as big as saying, no, you don't understand. There's going to be so many apps on this phone. It's all about, this new ecosystem. Like, it sounds silly at first, but then all of a sudden there's a lot of really good product built around it. And you go, oh, okay, I see what was happening here. But one thing at a time.
Yeah. I think that's it for
That's it for this week. Good talking to you guys. See you next time.